Hi, I'm Lisa, author of Unmending the Veil. I'm glad that you've chosen to read the book, and I'm even more excited that you've decided to do the Bible study. As much as I hope the book is entertaining and maybe even engaging, my greatest hope is that the Bible study will be transformational for you. It's something that I hope will really change your life. For session one, there are many places we could have begun, but there's one particular statement that has really weighed heavily on my heart. It's something that I felt myself. It's in the beginning of chapter 1 on page 1. Robin is sitting on the steps and she's looking out at the water, and she thinks, if there was a possibility of being near to God, it was here. That's such a sad statement for me. We find out later that Robin has gone to church all of her life, and she still does, yet she feels far away from God. I know I personally felt that. Maybe that's why I identify with such a statement. I served for years and I worked for years. I participated in Vacation Bible School, and I taught kindergarten Sunday school, and I did many things in the church, and I believe a lot of that had to do with me trying to draw nearer to God. I think I knew I was missing something. I often would ask myself, is this really all there is to it? I knew there was more to the Christian walk than what I was experiencing. I have a friend, my best friend as a matter of fact, and she is just one of the most godly women, and she's passionately in love with Jesus. And having her as a friend was like looking in a mirror and often seeing what I wasn't. And it became very frustrating. I really felt like a faker. I knew I was pretending, not in the sense that I was a hypocrite, but I was really trying to be what I knew I was supposed to be, but inside I knew that that's not what I was. I became frustrated enough that I eventually fell away. I completely quit going to church, and it just became one of those things that I thought wasn't for me. I thought I could never measure up, and that's a sad feeling. And so after a season away, there was a point in which that I realized that being away was a much worse place to be than being at church and being a faker. So I eventually went back. When I did go back, after not just a season of falling away, I literally fell, and I landed pretty hard and lived a life and went back to some of the same behaviors that I had lived before I became a Christian. And so I discovered that I was very humbled when I went back. I wasn't one of the church people who would look down on anyone else, because I knew that still without God, I was the same person. I could be capable of doing the same kinds of things. So once I did go back, one Sunday in our Bible study, we normally opened with an icebreaker, and this particular Sunday, it was a little more serious. Typically, it would be the kinds of questions like, what is your favorite color, or what is your favorite vacation destination, or even what's your favorite candy. This week, the question was, when you get to heaven, what's the first thing you'll say to Jesus? And immediately, I had my answer. And we had a large group that Sunday, and so I knew I would be one of the last ones. And at one point, the girl across from me, her answer, her reply to that question was, she would ask, why me? Meaning, why would he choose her? And it was just a sweet and sincere question. And finally, it went on around and it got to me. And my first thing that I would say to Jesus, I said, where's my granny? And that was really my question. That's really the first thing I would say to Jesus. I don't think, even at that point, at that moment, I didn't understand that disconnect between what her answer was and my answer. I truly would have just wanted to know where my granny was. I wouldn't have even stopped and said, hey, thanks for dying on the cross for me, and hey, thanks for saving me from hell. Instead, I just wanted to know where my granny was. And you know, those questions, and her answer and my answer just followed me heavily for the next few days. And I thought about it, and it finally dawned on me. The reason my first question would be, where's my granny? It would be because I just loved my granny. And the fact was, I didn't love Jesus. That was really the disconnect. That was my problem, was that I didn't love him. If you will, turn with me to Matthew 22. We're in Matthew 22:36. It says, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in all the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. That's the problem I had all along, is I missed the first thing. And first things come first for a reason. I had human love for Jesus. I had some gratitude, I guess, for Jesus. Even though I didn't say thank you to him, I absolutely felt that gratitude that he had died for me. It's more like that great uncle kind of love, the uncle that you have that lives in another state who maybe sends you a birthday card. You have family love for him, and I think maybe that's the type of love that I was used to. That's what I felt was enough. And what this kind of love is a totally different thing. As a matter of fact, as I've gotten to know him more and to love him more, I realize the kind of love he calls us to is so much deeper and so much more profound than what we consider love. I love brownies and I love the beach. That's a human kind of love that we try to equate to loving God. And what he has shown me, he's given me kind of a word to equate with each part of this verse. To love him with all your heart, he's shown me that that requires passion. That's that heart-pounding kind of love that makes you giddy inside. It's when you want to spend all your time with someone. It's when you were in junior high or high school and you had that first love feeling. That's the kind of love he wants from us. And as far as loving him with all of our soul, the word he's given me for that one is surrender, that I would just surrender everything I am to him, to give him all that I have. And that's certainly not the kind of love I was expressing before. And as far as loving him with all of my mind, the word he's given me for that is focus, that my entire focus was him, that I would wake up thinking of him and go to sleep thinking of him, and maybe even in the middle of the night wake up and think of him and think of verses that I had read and think of his word. And to meditate on his word, to love him with all of my mind was one of those things that I guess it was something that I couldn't even comprehend. And now I understand it's actually allowing him to transform my mind. So at the time when I realized that my problem was that I just didn't love him, I realized that there were no sermons that spoke to this particular problem. There were certain pastors or teachers that would say, well, when you love God, you will do this, this, and this, or because you love God, you will do that. And I never heard anybody say, look, you know, when you become a Christian, you may not love him right away. It may be something that you have to grow into, or it may be something that you have to go through a process of removing some barriers that you've created between yourself and him. So basically what I did at this point, not knowing where to turn, I considered at one point, what would you say in Sunday school? Would you raise your hand and say, by the way, I don't love God. Do you have any suggestions for me? Can you imagine all the people around you scooching their chair away, thinking you're going to be struck any minute? And I realized I was kind of out there on my own on this. So really my final determination was just to get real before God. It was a day I was home alone, the kids were at school, and I just sat with him, and I was honest, and I just told him, I said, the truth is I don't love you. That's why I said what I said as my question. That's why I asked, where's my granny, rather than speaking to you first, is I just don't love you, but I want to. And I was honest enough to say I'm willing, but it's just something that I don't know how to feel. That day, I actually was even a name dropper. I told him things like I said, I know Beth Moore loves you. I said, I know Teresa Snyder loves you. And if it's possible for them, I really believe it's possible for me. And I said, God, I want to know you by experience. I want to know what you're like in my life. So from that moment forward, things really became a different relationship. That day, I even quoted his own word to him. Hold your place in Matthew and turn with me to 1 John 5:14. It says, this is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we ask of him. So basically this is saying that if we ask in his will, he's going to answer that prayer. So if you turn back over to Matthew, we know his will is that we love him first, that we love him with all of our heart and our soul and our mind. So I basically quoted his word to him. I said, Lord, it says here that if I ask ask anything in your will, that you'll answer, and I know it's your will that I love you. So basically I told him, I said, you have to help me love you. And it was something I was willing to do. I was receptive. My part, I understood, was just to be willing and to meet with him daily. I had to discover how to get to know God personally. Up until that point, I had been taking all the classes, and I was getting to know many things about God, and I knew about the characters in the Bible. I understood the stories, but I had never once gotten to know God personally. And you know, in hindsight, it's kind of funny when I look back. At the time, I didn't understand that this was what was actually happening. But I believed at this point I was beginning a pursuit of loving God. And He's shown me after the fact that it was really His pursuit to show me how much He loved me. That's what I'd missed the whole time. It was the fact that I had never really received His love. I didn't understand how much He loved me. And it was through the process that it felt as if He just opened up the skies of heaven and just began to pour his love upon me. And I really, for the first time, understood how much that he did love me. And it was through that, it was the fact that he did love me so much that I was easily able to love him in return. As a matter of fact, on the same, in this, just a page over from where we're at in our 1 John verse, in verse 19, 4:19, it says, "We love because he first loved us." So it's one of those things that you have to understand, that you've got to get to know him personally first, and then you've got to get to know his love for you. And I'm going to ask you to do something, and this may feel a little silly, so just humor me. If you will, close your eyes. And for just a moment, I want you to imagine Jesus is kneeling with you, and he's just looking at you tenderly, and he asks you, he says, "Do you love me in the way that was described? Do you love me with passion? Do you love me with surrender? Am I the first in every thought that you have?" He's looking at you intently, and as much as you want to turn away, you know that even if you do, he's looking inside. He knows what really is in your heart. He asks you, "Am I first before all things, even before yourself?" Now you can open your eyes now. I know your first thought is one of condemnation. It's like, I used to be great. Here's another thing I'm not doing right. But that's not at all what this means. What this means is, if you had to answer no to this, if you know that you don't love him just passionately, if he doesn't make your heart race, and if you don't feel like you can surrender everything to him, then basically you just have a diagnosis of being lovesick. It's not that you're not getting another thing right. It's just that you've missed the first thing, just like I did. So what you have to do is you have to know his love in return, and before you know it, you'll be able to love him. As we go through this study, what you'll find is that is our entire focus of the study, is that we want to get into the presence of God where we can get to know him. And once you get to know him, you can do nothing but fall in love with him. As I've spoken today, I know that there are three types of people who've heard. The do's. There are people that you love the Lord just as I've described, and you may think that this might not be a study that you could glean very much from, but the truth is that I think we all have times in our lives, no matter what our feelings are, that we can find a few things that hinder us from being near to God. And also, this is a great thing for you to know about your friends, because you may love him so passionately, but the truth is, others around you probably don't. If you look at the messy lives of Christians, even your friends, you may can conclude that they're not passionately in love with him. The friend that I discussed earlier, when I was sharing with her going through this journey and how I was really just trying to fall in love with Jesus, and she looked at me and she said, "I just thought everybody loved God." She truly did not know. She had been saved since she was 7 years old, and she immediately loved him. She didn't understand how many other people can come into the faith, and they've brought hurt and heartache and many things that I think just stand in our way, where we can't really see God for who he really is. And so it prevents us from having that kind of love relationship. So if you're one of those people that you do love him passionately, maybe you can learn some things along the way to help your friends who don't. And then there are also the okays. You're okay with where you're at right now. You may not feel completely passionately in love with God, and sometimes it makes you even feel a little uncomfortable when people speak of those kinds of things. The way I see it, if you'll just maybe trudge along with us in this, you may learn a few things, and you may come to a place in your life where you really do want to have that kind of love. You don't want to be the person who doesn't feel close. And I can pretty much guarantee you, he's jealous for you. He wants every ounce of you, and so he will bring you to a point where you're going to need him desperately. And I hope at this point that you can just take some of the things you've learned in this study and draw nearer to him. And my favorite, the don'ts. It's you I most identify with, since that's where I lived for so many years. I know what it feels like to wonder if there's more and hope that there's more. And I want you to know there is much more. There's so much more along this journey. I pray that you'll really stick with the Bible study, that you'll do a devotion daily, that you'll seek him with all that you have. I would love to know more about you and your story. At our website, unmendingtheveil.com, there's a tab where you can press for contact and just give us a little bit of your story and let us know. Or you can email me directly at lisa@unmendingtheveil.com. I would really love to hear from you.